Right now on the line, though, we have Olivier Guita, who's Managing Director of Global Strat, an international security and geopolitical risk consultancy firm. Thanks for joining us, Olivier. I think we have Olivier on the line right now in lieu of not have... Yes, Olivier?
Can you hear me well now?
Now, loud and clear. What can you tell us, if anything, about the attacks as you know them that have just occurred in Paris?
Look, a couple of things. This is a Mumbai-style attack that I was fearing for a long time would happen in France or in Europe or in the U.S., especially in light of the hostage-taking. Allegedly, 60 people are being held hostage in one of the largest concert halls in Paris. What is really troubling is that just a few months ago, Islamic State had called specifically for attacks on concert halls in France. At the same time, I'm hearing that the two explosions that happened near the largest stadium in France where the president was watching a soccer game were due to two suicide bombers. If that's confirmed, that's the first case of suicide bombers in France in history. At the same time, the fact that this was very well carried out and simultaneous leads me to believe that it took weeks, months of preparation to come with 3 attacks like this. Whatever people are trying to make of what's going on, this is exactly what French security services have been telling me for the past year that they feared would be that kind of attack. Not a lone gunman, but few attacks at the same time and hostage taking. And unfortunately, that's exactly what's happening tonight in Paris.
Olivier, this is Ken Duffy, afternoon news anchor here at 77 WABC. You're talking about France, and they were possibly expecting this for a year, but is there anything exactly specifically that was going on with France related to ISIS or any Islamic extremists that could have precipitated this or been the actual, assuming, again, that it was terrorism, that there was something directly behind this?
Yes, you put your finger exactly in what I was going to allude to, is that for about now over a month, France has been targeting Islamic State in Syria. So they were part of the operation in Iraq, but they switched and moved also to Syria. And the first 2 airstrikes were against Islamic State training camps that specifically had French operatives in them that they wanted to kill. So the coincidence is really too big to ignore at this point.
Now, Olivier, how many actual ISIS fighters do the authorities believe have returned to France and into the surrounding European countries of West Europe and Eastern Europe after doing a stint of battle in either Iraq or Syria against their enemies?
Look, the numbers for France are staggering. The numbers of people that went already to Syria and Iraq is close to 2,000 people. The ones that are returned, which are mostly the first and second generation fighters, are between 300 and 400 people. But what you have to remember is that it could be most probably homegrown terrorism from people that were specifically told by the Islamic State not to leave, not to go to Syria and Iraq because they had enough men and enough manpower, but to stay home and attack the homeland. And those numbers are close to 5,000 people that the security services, for instance, in France and in the UK, the same number, have to monitor on a constant basis. And those are potential 5,000 Islamic terrorists.
Right, but Olivier, since the attacks against Charlie Hebdo that captured everyone's attention from around the world in January, what have the French anti-terrorist forces done against these cells, against these returning ISIS veterans, or as you say, homegrown terrorists, to keep the pressure on them?
Look, they are, first, after the Charlie Hebdo attacks, on a war path because you had 10,000 soldiers deployed in sensitive places around Paris and major towns. So that's the first one. The second one, they are foiling attacks almost on a weekly basis. And also, what they had is, both in the UK and in France, they are arresting close to one potential terrorist a day. So they haven't been sitting on their hands at all. And unfortunately, what I alluded to is the problem of having the means of fighting this war. Because to follow just 5,000 people that you think are potential jihadists in your homeland, you need 30 people per jihadist. So that means 150,000 law enforcement officers to follow those guys. So they have to make a choice of who they're going to follow. And that's the problem that our security services have, is that they're overstretched and they don't have enough means to follow this. And we live in a free society where, until now, people can just walk in a place without being searched.
Now, has a curfew been put into effect in Paris at this point?
No. Mostly it's been army and police cordoning off, the different areas where the attacks happened, and we still have ongoing the hostage situation at the concert hall. So this is far from over, unfortunately.
Do they assume that there are any other gunmen randomly running through the streets of Paris or attempting to find targets in other neighborhoods?
That they don't know, but I assume, for this kind of attacks, it would make sense for them to have the three attacks at the same time, possibly because they know that security services are going to be all over them. So I would suspect that they might not have other people going around, at least today. That doesn't mean that they cannot do like they did for Charlie Hebdo and the kosher store, that the attacks were consecutive days, and that's really the problem. But as I said, if they want to keep the hostage situation going, you could have a situation like in Mumbai where it lasted a few days.
Now, the French anti-terrorist forces, the security, the police, the national and the local police, they have percentages of their members who, in fact, originally their country of origin may have been in North Africa, or it may have been a Muslim-worshipping or an Arabic-speaking country. How intensively are these members of these security forces used to try to break these cells?
Oh, very, very, very intense. There's been most of the, and that's what we tend to forget, is how much of work is done behind the scenes that the public is not told about, because of obvious reason, not to scare off of how many plots that have been foiled. But if we're talking about a plot a week, they have done a tremendous job infiltrating cells. But the difference now from the Al-Qaeda kind of classical cell is the radicalization that happens through social media, or that happens, somebody decide on a whim that they're going to follow the Islamic State and they're going to ask for help and be able to do that. How do you infiltrate, 3 or 4 friends from the same high school that are going to Syria and coming back? How do you do that? So that's the modus operandi that is very scary, because infiltration cannot happen with such individuals, unfortunately.
We're talking to Oliver Goutte, Managing Director of Global Stratton International Security and Geopolitical Risk Consultancy firm. It's about the 3 attacks in Paris, the hostages being held in a theater at a 4th location. And Olivier, France is a member of the European Union. When you're a member of the European Union, you have free travel. It's almost like you have no borders. What kind of a hindrance is that to anti-terrorist forces when they're trying to track these potential cell members as they move from country to country?
That's a very good question, and that's interesting that you mentioned this, because just a few weeks ago, Islamic State documents had shown that they had advised their followers in Europe to specifically target other countries. So they would say, look, you're French, go and target Germany or Italy, or you're Italian, go and target Spain, because of that factor that they would be less inclined to be found by security services, because it would take time for different nations to tell and to give intelligence to other nations about their own. And that's really one of the things that we have to be looking at, is how nimble and how quickly those guys understand the weaknesses of our democracies and look at this to change their modus operandi.
Olivier Guita, Managing Director with Global Sat. Olivier, thank you very much for that information there.